Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton back in a Houston courtroom today facing those felony securities fraud charges, and it looks like a deal was reached. A pre-trial intervention contract was agreed upon, so Paxton will not be going to trial in April. But our KHOU 11 legal analyst Carmen Roe is here to talk us through it, walk us through the conditions of this agreement. Carmen, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Reka. Good morning, Sherman.
Good morning. Go ahead.
No. Well, okay, I guess the first big question for all of us non-lawyers is, what is a pre-trial intervention contract, and how did Paxton achieve this?
Good morning, everyone. This is, an issue that was on the table before, an opportunity for him, but it seemed like it wasn't going to happen. So it's very surprising to see it happen this quickly and this close to trial. But essentially, it's an informal written agreement between the defendant and the prosecutors in this case that after 18 months and perhaps even sooner results in a total dismissal of all 3 felony charges.
All right. I guess one would say this is a win for Ken Paxton, who was facing 3 felony charges on these securities fraud questions. Maybe we should remind folks this was because he was accused of soliciting investors for, I believe, 2 different companies without advising the investors that he was going to get some of the management fees from their business, as well as not registering with a securities commission to do this kind of business. So kind of a big deal. This has been a 9 years long trial case going back and forth. The judge said she was number 4 on this case. Can you kind of recap for folks, Carmen, why this has been such a long, strung out situation and how it ended up here in Houston?
Sure. I mean, I don't know that I could give any justice to the actual procedural posture here, because it, as you said, has run almost a decades long. But we started off in Collin County, where the indictments were handed down. There was a lot of battles on procedural issues between 2 sets of very talented trial lawyers. Ultimately, the venue was sent over to Houston. Meanwhile, we went up to the courts of appeals here in Houston. We went up to the Court of Criminal Appeals in Texas, the highest criminal court, back down to Houston, back up to the Court of Appeals. And we're here today on a pretrial setting where this case was supposed to go to trial in just a week and a half. And so to reach this kind of resolution just 7 months after it came back here to Harris County is again, very surprising, especially as you mentioned, we're talking about 3 felony charges, 2 of which are first-degree felonies that could result in 99 to life in prison. And to go from there to what amounts to a dismissal after some terms and conditions are met is wide of the mark of what most people thought this case was going to turn into.
So as you mentioned earlier, the terms were the 100 hours of community service, the 15 hours of legal education classes dealing with legal ethics, which some people kind of find ironic considering his position. And of course, he has to pay restitution. We heard in the courtroom that the restitution is just south of $300,000. Paxton also in a separate case owes a settlement in a whistleblower case. How are all of these payouts going to happen, and are they connected in any way?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, as an attorney who practices here in Houston, I think this case does not reflect well on criminal justice, either in Collin County or in Harris County, because what it appears to be is that Kenneth Paxton was able to buy his way out of this criminal allegation, one that he essentially admitted to the basis of many times in the media prior to charges and after charges. The fact that he was able to delay this proceeding for almost a decade. He attempted to defund almost successfully the prosecutors who were coming after him for these criminal allegations. Again, it does not speak well of the criminal justice system. I can't see how Kenneth Paxton doesn't think this is a victory. And it's one that's come on the heels of several victories for him here in Texas, both politically and now legally.
And I'm not a legal expert, and I'm hoping you can obviously clarify this, but is this an admission of guilt with this deal, or is that not in black and white?
I'm so glad you asked that. A lot of pretrial intervention agreements require that a defendant admit responsibility or guilt. In this case, it's quite clear that Kenneth Paxton was not required to admit guilt. And so this isn't a plea of guilty. It's not an acceptance of responsibility. It's a negotiated resolution of 3 serious felony charges.
You know, your phrase was wide of the mark, this solution, if you will. Do you want to speculate, and you may have hinted at this previously, but do you want to speculate how this happened?
Well, that would be tough to do. I wish I knew more. I'm sure a lot of people do. Most people thought Kenneth Paxton was really facing prison time on this case. But I, again, would, look to the talent, the almost 40 years of experience each individual trial prosecutor and defense counsel had in this case. I think it was a hard-fought victory for Kenneth Paxton that a lot of the surrounding narrative played into, not the least of which was the impeachment trial that was unsuccessful that we saw right here live on KHOU. I think all of that played into this resolution. And of course, importantly, the judge pushing everyone forward and saying, we're not giving you any more time on this case. We are going to trial or you're going to resolve it.
You mentioned the defunding of the prosecution, and that, of course, has been a big deal. I guess the original negotiation was $300 an hour, and Kent Schaefer, one of the 2 prosecutors, actually just withdrew from the case fairly recently because he hadn't been paid. How does that come about? How can you not pay lawyers for doing their work here, the special prosecutors?
I've never seen anything like it. There was a law change as a result of this case. There has been this attempt to defund. There's been the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals getting involved in fees for prosecutors. And then, as you mentioned, we have Mr. Schaefer, who actually withdrew from this case, which may have impacted and likely impacted, given the timing, this resolution. And, again, it's one of those things that does not speak well to justice that a criminal defendant facing 3 felony charges could have such a sweeping impact on a case and, of course, on the law and the way we pay prosecutors in Texas, which he absolutely did based on this case.
Ken Paxton was supposed to go to trial on April 15th. He is avoiding that now with this agreement. But will he face further charges or possibly a trial if he doesn't complete the terms of this agreement?
I mean, you have to believe that the highest law enforcement officer, as well as a licensed attorney, can follow the terms and conditions that are set out here. But in the rare circumstance that he does not, he would be back before this judge. He would be facing a prosecution, and they would move forward as if this agreement never existed. And so that's exactly what the judge in this case cautioned about, that if we're back here for any reason, we're going to trial, and I'm going to set this for trial very quickly and not allow this to continue to linger and, of course, cost us money here in Houston on this case.
Yeah, she hit that word speedy trial with a little bit of extra emphasis, so you could kind of feel where she was going with that one. They talked about restitution just being south of $300,000. Is that the money that Paxton would have garnered in terms of fees from these various companies, the relationship of which he did not disclose to the potential investors that he was going to get money from their investments?
Sherman, I'm not actually positive who's going to get that restitution, but it's meant to be assessed for 2 reasons. One, to reimburse victims of crime who may have lost that amount of money, or in other terms, at times it's used punitively to suggest that's the amount of money that he would have made and therefore he should pay it back. And so, Mr. Weiss suggested that that's going to the victims in this case. And so we can surmise from that perhaps that's the loss that they faced as a result of his criminal conduct.
So as we mentioned, he first was indicted back in 2015, so we're talking almost a decade at this. And I'm wondering, prosecutors have alleged this and made these accusations as well. Was it just to completely exhaust options? They kept moving the trial location, exhaust resources, and that's how they were able to come to this? Because when you look at this in general, if someone who wasn't so high profile and was facing these charges, there's probably a good chance this would either, get settled sooner or go to trial.
Exactly. And that's why this is such a surprising outcome. Look, cases get, people get pretrial diversions. Cases are resolved this way all the time, but they're the kind of cases that don't get indicted, or they're resolved very quickly with a pretrial intervention because you believe the value of the case is ultimately a dismissal. This case was so aggressively fought at every level of the proceedings, all the way up, as I said, to the highest court here, the criminal court here in Texas. And so it's surprising that we could do all this battling, spend all this money, have so many lawyers doing so much work to get to a result that equals a dismissal on 3 felony charges. And so perhaps after today, we will hear from the parties and we'll have a better sense of why this may have been the outcome here. But I don't think that anyone is less surprised than I am that we're here today with, again, what amounts to a dismissal for Kenneth Paxton after almost a decade of litigation.
So this potentially speaks to the benefits of having deep pockets or lots of resources or political clout.
Yeah.
So does this potentially set a precedent for cases in the future similar to this?
Well, Sherman, you're absolutely right. I think it does speak to the amount of money and the powerful lawyers that were involved in this case. And of course, the impact or power that Kenneth Paxton wields from his position as the Attorney General. And that's what I think does not reflect well on our system of justice today. That said, this is a case that has been rare, unusual, unprecedented from the beginning. It has been for almost 10 years. And I don't think that today's outcome is going to impact other cases in the future. And I hope that the political system that sometimes finds its way into our criminal justice system doesn't have this impact in the future, but only time will tell.